Hey guys, my name is Matsumo, and today I want to take a look at a game that I think is highly underrated, and I wish that more people would play it, and that is Hell Let Loose. I think the best way of describing it is that it is essentially what Battlefield could have been. Just like with Battlefield, you have heals, you can revive teammates, you can place down literal spawn beacons, supply crates for everyone to take advantage of. There's different classes that have different play styles, everything that you would expect in the Battlefield franchise, but where it differentiates itself is that it is much more hardcore and realistic. Where Battlefield has become much more accessible, which isn't necessarily a bad thing because it appeals to a larger audience, Hell Let Loose kind of sets itself apart where it only takes one or two shots, depending on what weapon that you're using, to drop pretty much everyone that you come across. And the result of it, I think, is fantastic. One of the things that I think assists with this game is the scale and the size of the map itself. Now, I realize how ridiculous this is going to sound here in a second because I know I'm playing a video game, but it doesn't actually make you feel like you're playing a video game, something that was handcrafted by someone. It feels like you stepped into this world, stepped into a real life place, and you're just trying to survive because of the sheer size of it. Now, I know for some people, this actually might be a bit of a downside because the idea of running around for a couple of minutes trying to get towards the action and then getting taken out of seemingly nowhere from someone that was hiding in a bush 100 meters out doesn't sound like the best gameplay experience. And that is going to happen. It's going to be something that you're going to have to overcome and start to learn the flow of what Hell Let Loose has to provide. But I will say that once you start to get a grasp and you're working with your squad, once you finally do get those flanks off and you take a squad out or you capture the objective, it is easily one of the coolest experiences that you can have in this game. It is an incredible amount of fun. Now, one thing that is worth noting, and hopefully I've sort of alluded to this already, is that this game requires a fair amount of coordination and teamwork. If you're expecting to play this like Battlefield where you can run off by yourself, just ignoring everyone else and expect to just be Rambo and take everyone out, you can technically do that, but it's going to be very challenging. Where this game really shines is when you do work with your squad, working together to capture the different objectives around the map. Once you do that, you really open up the possibilities of what Hell Let Loose has to provide. For example, you can only have one medic in your squad at any given moment. The developers didn't want entire teams just to be playing as medics, just constantly reviving anyone that gets taken out. That would probably result in some balancing issues. You can only have a certain amount of anti-tank players as well. And so if you're off by yourself and you don't have the necessary gadgets to take out that heavily armored vehicle, you're pretty much out of luck. And so it really requires you to stay coordinated and working together if you want to be successful. When you're able to use teamwork in this game, it just hits a little bit different. You can go on an awesome streak, you can take out multiple players by yourself, and don't get me wrong, that's enjoyable. I'm not saying that it's not, but when you're able to do that, but also with teamwork, it just kind of pushes it to that next level and allows you to do something that normally would not have been possible. And I think that is the heart of why I've been enjoying this game so much. Another thing I have really grown to appreciate is that at the end of the day, the developers still recognize that this is a video game and they still try to make it somewhat accessible. I know that some of you are probably viewing this and thinking that this is way too hardcore. I don't know if I'm in for this kind of realism because it would probably require a steep learning curve. And there is a learning curve here, but I feel like it's not as insurmountable as other games like Squad. When I play Squad or things along that nature, one of the things that was always a big downside for me was that I could never figure out who was an enemy and who was a teammate. And that usually was because not only of the game modes that we were playing, but also because there was no icon above friendly players. Now, I know that some people love this aspect about those kinds of games because it makes it feel much more realistic, but for me personally, it's always been this roadblock. I distinctly remember having these moments where I would be staring at an enemy way out in the distance because I don't have an optic. I cannot see exactly what kind of camo the person has. Is it green stripes or is it green dotted? And because that person either just completely ignored if I was a friendly or not, or they just knew the difference quicker than I did, I get taken out. Having that happen over and over and over again, just simply because because I don't want to take out a friendly was really frustrating. And so what I like about Hell Let Loose is that it still recognizes that it's a video game and they have those friendly icons above your teammates. And so at least for me personally, it just facilitates and makes the game so much more enjoyable and accessible, and I'm not having to constantly second guess who I'm going against. And while I know it sounds small, I know it sounds like this very, tiny little thing, but in the grand scheme of things, it has made me enjoy Hell Let Loose so much more. Another thing I really appreciate are the game modes themselves. They're very offensive and defensive oriented. If you head towards the objective, you're going to find action without a shadow of a doubt. The reason why I bring this up is that when you compare it to a similar game like Squad, you could have rounds, unless they've changed things significantly since the last time I played, where you will literally sit on a point with your squad defending and you won't have any action for a solid 30 minutes. Nothing will happen. And while we'll make those moments where things finally do pop off even more enjoyable because it just kind of like a crescendo to the round, I would rather have more consistent action, and I think that's where Hell Let Loose succeeds, where something like Squad isn't really for me. You're going to be able, at a quick glance, know where to head, and you're going to have the gameplay that you would kind of expect, and that's something that I really appreciate. One thing that is worth noting, though, is that because this game is in early access right now, is that it does suffer from a lot of poor optimization. It is difficult to get this game to run at even 60 frames per second with someone who has a pretty decent PC. There's a lot of times where I'm only getting around 45 frames per second, which isn't anything to write home about. That's a pretty big downside. Now, it is probably due in part because of the sheer size of the map. There's also a lot of people. It's around 50 v 50. There's many people running around. It's large in scale, but I'm hopeful that in the future they are going to be able to optimize it and streamline things so that there aren't these problems. When you're enjoying what the game has to provide, but then you drop down to like 30 frames per second because a giant, mortar came on in, it can kind of take away from the experience. It's not perfect like any other video game, but just know if this does sound exciting and you want to get involved, that this is a big downside of it currently, and I'm crossing my fingers that they'll be able to resolve it quickly. Another thing that's a bit unfortunate is that some of the maps are brutal depending on what side that you start on. Now, I realize that this does fit the theme of the game, and I fully understand that I'm kind of contradicting what I said earlier about everything feeling much more organic, but at the same time, I think that they could do some improving with a few of the spawns, at least at the beginning of a match. When you're just trying to get over those trenches or get over the hill and there's only one way for you really to do it, it'd be nice if there was a couple more options. It's not a deal breaker, but I think that they are going to have to go on in, because this is early access, kind of fine tune some things along the way to make some of these maps a little less favored from one side over the other. And then finally, to put it simple, Hell Let Loose is just epic. I know that a lot of games try to be cinematic, but I think Hell Let Loose achieves that by not necessarily having the best looking game, because while it doesn't look awful, it's nothing really spectacular, but it's the entire package. It's the sheer scale of it all. 50 v 50, people running up the side of a mountain, bombardments out in the distance. You got all these noises and things happening around you. Like, I cannot tell you how many times it felt like I was literally dropped in the middle of a movie. I mean, just look at this. Wow, look at that bombing run. Holy cow. My frame rate dropped to 40, but it was sick.
Yeah, it's pretty Michael Bay though, right?
Yeah, it was super Michael Bay. Okay, dude, this game is epic. They just have to fix the frame rate. But yeah, guys, that is about it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed. I am loving Hell Let Loose right now, and I just wanted to make a video to get this on your radar. I think it has a lot of promise, especially considering that it is in early access. If they're able to hash out a couple of these issues and expand upon and just keep adding more features, I truly do think that this is going to be a diamond in the rough. Let me know what you guys think about the game, though. Have you had a chance to play? If so, do you agree with me? Do you think that it has a lot of promise? Give me your guys' thoughts down below. But yeah, guys, until next time, have a good one and take it easy.